You're back. March, you haven't forgotten. Oh, blessed are you. You, St. Judith. Yes. Thank you. You just missed one. She missed a year. She missed 38. But, no, you did right. You are wonderful. It's just that you missed 38 last week, and I was sad. I know. But you're here for 39, and I appreciate it. Because we're going to have 2 days on 1939, and then I have to say goodbye until next term. Can you believe it? We're already in March. So there we are. I'm right, aren't I, Frank? We just have the 2 terms left.
Yes.
And so 2 visits, and this will take us through 1 year. But what a year it is. I mean, it's a big year. Let me say, I'd invited you to my 1938 New Year's Eve party, okay? And you had said, we need champagne. I'd say, no, we need scotch. And we need it on the rocks, hold a soda. Because if you think 1938 has been exciting, you just wait to see what's ahead. So truly, people who lived in that particular era were going through quite a bit. I would say that would be true of Europeans even more than Americans. But that is not to deny that our own experience in that particular time was quite exciting. Perhaps more so for those who were Czechs, because we know that they and their descendants, blessed people that they are, these Bohemians, yes, were not only very exciting people, but they were also very threatened people. As we saw last time in 1938, they kind of lost out at the Munich conference. Because once the British and French agreed to German demands, it meant, of course, that if the Germans can do it, why can't the Poles do it? Why can't the Hungarians? Everybody wants a chunk of Czechoslovakia. So as far as Czechoslovakia is going, if 1938 was the beginning of the end, then 1938 will be the end. And there will be no more Czechoslovakia until after World War II. So that's where this all starts. And you can see it on the map, well known to many of you, lovingly.
Not that map.
You Czech, Moravian descendants, no tears, no crying. I want you to control yourselves throughout this. You will understand this area. The Sudetenland is the predominantly German ethnic area that would be taken by the demand of the Germans and would be occupied in the fall of 1938. And of course, that will mean that the Poles will get their little share in November of that year. And of course, the German ally, Hungary. Remember, they had been defeated in World War I, but they've got a big friend, Germany. So they want a little part of Czech territory, so that can be arranged, and it was. What is particularly interesting to me is the area that is now an independent state, the area called Slovakia. And when we grew up, we learned Czechoslovakia. And today, of course, they are separate countries. So I made it my interest just to say, well, I wonder about the love between these two people. And some people laugh when I say this. But when one is a youth, one likes to believe people hug and love each other. Czechoslovakia, hug. It didn't work that way. Oh, yeah. Let's look at one of the people involved in this story, and he is a man of the cloth, okay? He is a Monsignor, and those of you who grew up in the Roman Catholic faith may know of Monsignors, a higher rank of clergy in the Roman Catholic Church. This particular individual, Father Joseph Tiso, was a Slovak patriot, and he didn't like Czechs. I mean, he loved them as a clergyman, but he did, you know what I mean? But he was more like, go big ass. You know, we don't.
When they would throw money in the collection plate, they were okay.
Yeah. But he was very much into the Slovakian independence movement, and he thought Czechs gave them a hard time, that they were discriminatory and that they treated Slovaks bad. So, what did he do? Well, he made a deal with the devil, is what he did. As the leader of the Slovak people, he sort of said, we really like what you did at Munich, Hitler, and we would love to be your friend. Well, being friends with Hitler can be dangerous, but you see the handshake, and there it was, and he became a German ally, Joseph Tiso, and as such, he will end his life on the gallows in 1946, but not to get ahead of the story. At this point, he will simply become the head of an independent, well, somewhat independent, Slovakia. Meanwhile, the president of the Czechs, that poor soul. Now, you say, I miss Benesh. I know you do. Last week he was here. And where is he gone? Went to London. Yes. Why did he go to London? Felt it would be more comfortable in London. Say, I love some Prague. Wish I could be in Prague, but I can't be in Prague. I just think things are going to change, in Prague. And they did. This individual, you see, bless his heart, was now the leader. Those of you with a medical background will not be surprised that he had a heart condition, and I think he should have had an EKG before that interview with the Fuhrer. I mean, his health wasn't good when he went. You know the little pills they take? You know the, yeah, I think he should have had one of those, because this is like the before shot of their visit. He took the train from Prague to Berlin, Emil Hasha, and he said, the Fuhrer needs to talk to you. And he said, well, always glad to see our German friends. And I kept thinking, is this for real? Is this a joke or something? Wouldn't you think you wouldn't want to have this? Well, he talked at him, and I mean that, for hours. And I mean, it wasn't dinner, no wine, and no meat, because the Fuhrer was a vegetarian. And you better, and don't dream of tobacco, because the Fuhrer didn't approve of smoking. So, you sit there with that man screaming and ranting at you, and the Fuhrer's doctor gave him, what do they call those things? I guess a pep pill. Yeah, but I think it was stronger to make Dr. Hasha sort of be lively, and say, yeah, let's talk about Bohemia and Moravia. Fuhrer, I don't think he got quite that excited. But, if it's going to be an all-night session, You know, some people used to take these things to make them stay up all night to study. Yeah. Was that what it was? I was shocked. They would borrow my notes, and I wouldn't condemn them. I would just shake my head and turn over and fluff my pillow. You know? But I didn't live that lifestyle. But you know those kind of... Okay, so he had that, and by the end of it, Emil Hacha actually agreed that the Czech part would now be more or less a protectorate. And Hacha maintained that position as a kind of German puppet until the end of the war. I mean, he was not tried as a war criminal, but it was a very, very difficult position for him to be in, no doubt about that. Well, anyway, there's no more Czechoslovakia. Yeah, so that's the end of that story. And meanwhile, we know about Franco and the end of the loyalist effort and the victory of the nationalists. And this is all part of 1939 now, even though probably most of the American supporters of the loyalists had already gone home, gotten out. I think, and certainly any support they had from Stalin and the Soviets was over. I think Stalin had decided, you know, you spend money on this, but didn't work out as well as I'd hoped, so cut our losses, let it go. Meanwhile, Franco will be recognized fairly early on, United States, Great Britain, that particular regime as the leader. So, you know, from the point of view of Italians and Germans, you know, we provided the decisive support for them, the winning side, that is to say. And I suppose that Hitler was looking for a payoff. This is a shot of their, as far as I'm aware, their one and only meeting. They met at a train in 1940, and I guess Hitler was in France, and Franco came up, so to speak, to greet him, and I suppose Hitler said, you know, we're really excited about this war, and we know how appreciative you are, and, you know, we would really enjoy working with you. Now, that is not exactly the words, but I'm getting the gist of it, you know. Hitler would later say that talking to Franco was more painful than a dental extraction because Franco was not going to budge. And you really can't blame him. There was nothing at this point that Spain needed less than another war. So y'all go on with the war. We will sit this one out, but we wish you all the best. Ole, as we like to say in Madrid, and hasta la vista, and on we go. Yeah, this was not a great success. Franco maintained his neutrality, luckily for him, and of course got to die in his bed, peacefully surrounded by family and priests, in 1975. As we were told repeatedly on Saturday Night Live. Yes, he's dead. Now look at him. Now, is he trying out to be the band director or what? Is that not classic? I mean, it's like Gilbert and Sullivan, isn't it? Like, you know, Grand High Poobah. When you think about that and you say, wow, people don't talk about him a lot. No, they don't. You know, something was wrong in my education. Maybe I should have gotten a refund on my tuition. Because I didn't learn much about Albania in school. I don't know about you, but just sort of passed by. You know, you're talking about the Greeks and the Yugoslavs, and if I'd been really clever like some of you, I would have raised my hand and say, teacher, what about Albania? Well, but unfortunately, I was quiet, nay, taciturn, and saying, in effect, we're going to find out. Okay. He was someone who will become very important to our story. In fact, he is, let me introduce him formally, His Majesty, King Zog the First. Zog. You can just call him Big C if you wish, but that's King Zog the First. Now, again, if you went to a superior school and you paid extra tuition, you could have learned about King Zog. But this is one of those magical stories you had to wait to come to this class to learn about and tell your friends and neighbors about Zogian studies here in the OLLI program. We're very proud of introducing this new Albanian episode. Zog had many interesting qualities. I think being a Muslim in a predominantly Christian country was one, and being someone who had been prime minister, strongman, not unlike some of you will recall Louis Napoleon, who would become Napoleon III, that kind of figure. You know, you're the leader, but you toss and turn and say, why can't I be king? Why can't I be king? And then if you get the right supporters, you will have yourself declared king. I'm King Zog, you know, that kind of thing. You know, his name was something like Zogabit, something like that. But he wanted to be a king. You say, but I'm the strong man, I'm the leader. And that's never, you know, it just kind of gets frustrating. So he had himself proclaimed King Zog the First. And then, of course, there are the problems of how do you pay the bills. Albania is not a wealthy country. Let me just put it that way. And he had some expensive taste. I'm sure the Queen did too. And it was a country that was not far from Italy. And so we hit the Italians up. Just for a couple of weeks, I need to borrow a few lira. And the missus wants to go to Rome and pick up a few things, and I'll get it back to you week after next. We know that. You've heard of these people. Yes. Yeah, I want to get that covered. Give me a week on that. Yeah, I'll sign some paperwork if you need me to. You know, that kind of thing. Well, so Zog becomes, how you say, a total dependent on the Italians. You say, wow, do the Italians have that much? Well, if you're Albanian, they do. You know, let's not get picky here. I mean, maybe Italy is the most wealthy kingdom, but it's a sight richer than Albania. But Albania is right poor. Have a lot of shepherds and a lot of mountains. So, Zog's government is maintained, so to speak, by the Italians. And it becomes like a little pet. You know, we sort of, you know, like you, Albania, you're nice. And, you know, this is me petting Albania. Okay, you get it. So that is the backdrop for this story, because, and he looks so powerful and excited. I think then he was getting some good investments with a lot of that Italian money personally, because he could not have been more shocked than Good Friday of 1939 when Italian troops are moving into Albania. And he said, well, I didn't ask for that. I mean, like, I didn't call him and say, I need a little armed support. He was basically kicked out. How rude. Yeah, I mean, it's like, they didn't tell me you were going to do this. I thought you loved us. Well, and then, of course, the Italians are going to say, well, we do, but this is the way we want to show that love. You know, we want to protect you. We know about, if folks give you money, you better ask. You better find out. Don't accept money unless you're sure there are no strings. Don't sign that paperwork. Because that was the poor Albanians with Italy. And you say, why does, if you were in the mind of Il Duce, and you ask yourself, why would you toss and turn? I've got to have it. You know, some fantasy, I'm going to take over Albania. Oh, and just those thrills of lust. I told you, shepherds, mountains, and what else? Not a lot. But they did it. You know what I think in part? Because if Fuhrer had taken stuff and we didn't get anything, I'm not going to call him either. He didn't call me when he took that part of Czechoslovakia, so I'm not going to call him. See if he likes that. You know, he called me when he took Austria, and I appreciated it, but I didn't get a call this time. He's not getting one either. I think there was some hurt. So I'm going to take country, and then we'll see what the Fuhrer says. I probably didn't say a whole lot. I don't think the Fuhrer was exactly concerned about Albania. You know what I mean? He had shepherds. Don't worry. He could all the shepherds he needed. So this is his doing. There's Albania, and you say, are we going further east? Oh, yeah. But it's going to be more difficult in the future. Because I think this little Albanian business took no time. And King Zog would be looking for a new home. And speaking of King Zog, Olivia, would you show them the little newsreels there, please, ma'am? Now, remember, this is a holy day. This is Good Friday. So,
Good Friday morning along the coast of Albania. Good Friday morning when the world pauses in its labors to remember the Prince of Peace. But today in the tiny kingdom on the Adriatic, people look out across their harbors down the muzzles of Italian guns, look into the faces of Italian soldiers, look up to masses of Italian warplanes, read leaflets in their own language, calling upon them to surrender immediately or be massacred from the air. Some reports say the Albanians resisted the invaders, but what can a nation do outnumbered 40-1? So into the capital, Tirana, rides the Italian army, and soon a free assembly of Albanians offers the crown to King Victor Emmanuel. And when all the snipers have been combed out, Count Chano struts in to take charge. He takes a bow from the balcony, welcomed by the entire population.
There you, yeah, I know they were all there. We love you, you know, it's like we love you, Duce. They do that for a while, and now we're going to get to see, yeah, there he is.
Albania, the little Balkan country whose invasion by Italy on Good Friday suddenly hit the headlines and shook the world. The details are too familiar to need retelling, but Movieturns pictures of King Zog's wedding with Queen Geraldine, taken only a year ago, add poignancy to the story. Observe Count Ciano, there on the king's right, witnessing the marriage ceremony. A year later, the Italian foreign minister is to fly here to Tirana to supervise its occupation. Our compassion goes out to Queen Geraldine, here seen taking the salute with the king as units of the tiny Albanian army march past. Contrast this happy scene with the Queen's flight 3 days after the birth of her son. She survived the ordeal, but her condition is serious. The King and Queen are in exile, and the Kingdom of Albania has been wiped off the map, all between Good Friday and Easter.
Queen Geraldine,
Critical days, these Easter
half
holidays, and many people on
half Hungarian, was, along with King Zog and their child, now to be exiled because the King of Italy would now be the King of Albania. No, and I haven't forgotten Emperor of Ethiopia. So we are collecting some titles, aren't we? And you say, well, I'm worried about Zog and Geraldine. Don't be, because they had some good investments. Don't they call them blue chip? Because they ended up in the south of France. So they weren't selling Avon or any. I mean, they did real nice. So no magazine subscriptions, clipping coupons, none of that. So we don't worry about the Albanian royal family, but that was the end of the line for King Zog as a ruler. So it was short and sweet. And again, you may recognize Mussolini's son-in-law, the Italian foreign minister, Count Ciano. The interesting thing about so many of these people is they will not survive this period. They will live into the mid-40s, and for some reason, many of them are going to make a departure from this world after these events. But he is, I would say, among one of the worst of the lot to put on this whole routine, because they full well knew in 1938 that the plan to take over Albania for whatever reason was in store. So he's now got his new land, and you know he's excited. So he is now ready. I wonder what I did. Okay. And yet, whatever hurts, and in relationships, there can be hurts. And yet, we want it to be stronger. You say, well, why can't we ask the Japanese to share our deep affection? Well, they can be part of our axis, Rome, Berlin, Tokyo axis, but this is even tighter. This is just the two of us, not three, just two. They thought about calling it the Pact of Blood, but somebody said maybe that's a bit much. Let's just go with the Pact of Steel. I find it interesting that Il Duce did not attend. He sent the son-in-law to the ceremony, but it was all the same. Von Ribbentrop would do the signing for the German government. I think the Fuhrer is there sort of as master of ceremonies, if you will, and it's like, what did they used to say in the old newspapers? A good time was had by all. So a lot of eating and drinking, and we're crazy about you, and how crazy are we? Steel. God, it endures. No flexibility. It's tough. And lasting. It's like permaseal. I mean, we're just together. And you see there, here is our famous Air Force pilot right there, Marshall Garrett. I mean, this is a who's who of the Third Reich. I mean, you have quite a few, everybody wanted to get into the shots, and just crazy about those Italians, and we'll always be crazy about you. I don't know if those feelings would last. But for right now, in the spring of 1939, we're just hot for you. Yeah. But sometimes hot goes to tepid. I hate to tell them, but it's interesting. The Pact of Steel, a very, very interesting agreement. And again, if you have heard me speak about the Rome-Berlin Axis, you understand this relationship between 1933 and 1939. We've had our highs and lows. There have been some hurts. I mean, it hadn't been the course of true love does not run smooth. But they realized you're the only one. And yet, when you think about Mussolini and Hitler, it's quite, it's tight.
Very tight.
But not a pact of blood, pact of steel. Just remember that. But they did, that was serious. They really did have a panel discussion about blood, steel, what should we call it to emphasize how deep? Well, I won't sing, but it's a very, very moving passion that we have for each other. Now, this is amazing to me. This was May 22nd. This is the third article of that relationship. And read it, if you will, if you can make it out. I tried to blow it up as best I could because I thought, despite all the diplomatic gibberish, you see the phrase that one of Italy or Germany, become involved in military complications. You really shouldn't say that. I think it was the only time a treaty like that. You usually say if you get attacked or somebody beats up on you and you would like, oh no, I'm being hurt. Would you come? Yes, that's why we have that relationship. You little buddy, you're my friend. I'm crazy. You know, that kind of, but this is, if they become involved in warlike complications, if we are beating up on somebody, you're going to be there with me, aren't you? Oh, see. Oh, yeah. That is like one of a kind, I would think, in the history of alliances, that particular phrase will immediately step into its side as an ally and will support it with all its military might, land, sea, and air. Oh, those Germans. They didn't know when they signed that the payment would be long and hard and not good at all. The Italians agreeing to be the buddy of Italy was not a good thing for Germans. I will have to say that. And if you know of the history of World War II, you will understand what I mean. As Churchill said, it's only right the Germans get them this time. We had them last time. So it's like, and if you are of Italian ancestry, no offense. I love the Renaissance. The art is wonderful. Trips to Rome, I just can't get enough. But as a military ally, not so much, okay? Just understand. Oh, now here is my favorite poem. Yes, Colonel Beck. You'll remember the mighty Pilsudski, Mr. Poland, basically, is no longer with us. Pilsudski died in the mid-1930s. Beck was part of his entourage, I think it's fair to say. And being, of course, in a favored position by Pilsudski, Beck was allowed to become more or less sort of the figurehead leader of the government. I wouldn't call him exactly a dictator, but I would say that he was looked to as the principal spokesman for the Polish government. Beck was a tough character insofar as he was certainly no friend of the Soviet Union, and he hoped, since he had a treaty with the Germans since 1934, that to the West, he would get along fairly well for Poland, because Poland was, how you say, in a very precarious position. If you are Poland and you're trying to maintain yourself, it's not easy. You have dreams, bad dreams, coming from both East and West. And he was not willing, understandably, to be a satellite of either Germany or the Soviet Union. So he attempted, and that's the best word I can use, to maintain that position, keeping Poland free. On the other hand, he tried to do it by establishing relationships, as with France, and basically saying, if the French are attacked, we Poles will go to war for you, or if we are attacked, then you'll come to war for us, because the French were trying to create this network. Unfortunately, and I say this with great affection for my Czech friends, Colonel Beck did not like the Czechs. I want to say that as nicely as I can.
He liked Czech land, though.
Well, he liked Czech land, but he didn't like Czechs on the land. He wanted the Czechs off the land because he wanted Poles on the land. It's more or less serious that he was not willing basically to say, oh gosh, we've all been so hurt during the Great War. Let's all get together and get close. Because here we are, we're new, you're new, you Czechoslovakians. We Poles, we're new. Can we just all hug? No, we can't. No, we can't. Don't touch me. No, it's true. The Poles could be a little stiff-necked. They did not get close to their little Entente neighbors. And this will create certain problems in the future. And I'm talking about the 1930s. Because the 1920s, it's okay. They can manage. But by the 1930s, things are getting a little bit more serious. Because while Stresemann and the Weimar crowd were willing to, you remember the Polish corridor, Danzig and all of that? They were saying, oh, well, we can negotiate it and let's all work together in Geneva, go League, that kind of thing. We're over there, okay? That's past. We're ready for some action. And so Beck's going to have some serious problems. Olivia, think we're ready to put old Beck in the cab. He was a very interesting fellow.
We welcome Colonel Beck, the Foreign Minister of Poland, surely one of the most important visitors to London for many years. For it was after negotiations with the Colonel that Mr. Chamberlain gave his momentous pledge to Poland, serving notice on the world that expansion through aggression and the threat of force must cease. So the nation which Colonel Beck represents becomes our partner in an axis which stretches across Europe from west to east, an axis for the maintenance of peace and freedom.
I think I heard him say, I love you, Chick.
I think he did.
Maybe not. Colonel Beck went to London and, of course, got what he wanted. And what he wanted, of course, was Chamberlain's agreement that if Hitler or the Germans, should threaten Poland, or the Germans threaten Britain. We want to make this vice versa, but we know that the other would spring into action. Beck then, you might say, was dependent on the British. So if you've ever wondered why it was the British get involved, I think Beck probably had a lot to do with it. He was quite the wily politician. And incidentally, he died in 1944. He was refugee in Romania, of all places. And but his son would be active in Chicago in the Polish American community. Isn't that nice? I know you're very touched, very ecumenical, and you have all these different communities probably going to meetings under the Stars and Stripes and saying, we Poles, we Czechs, we really care about each other.
Why does he stay out of Berlin?
Exactly. Now, all of this then is to say that the Poles must have felt some security. And notice I underlined the word some, because it's not like Hitler's going to go, oh, I'm so scared. I mean, it's like, oh, you're really bad. You Poles now are protected. Well, sort of. You know, by paper they're protected. You know, they've got an agreement. And, you know, the French are going to say, yeah, and YOC, we're going to be there. Yeah, we love you too, sort of. So, whatever the British say. Am I doing something wrong? You think you got stuck?
Yeah. You got that one? Yeah, should go.
Oh, technology. I mean, it just... Give it a kick back there, Olivia.
You got a pointer? Pointer working? Yes.
Frank, you are.
There it is.
Your strength, your power. Yeah, here it is. And again, it's the YOC French backup just cracks me up because, again, and I'm sure we can all love the Third Republic. It's just, it's real sad. But basically, if the British say y'all will do it, then we'll do it too. And you say, well, that doesn't sound enthusiastic, but there's probably something to understand that the French, with all their problems, are not really prepared to do any sort of guaranteeing by themselves. So when the British say, you know, you want to come in, and the French say, oh, okay. And you remember that, I've got to show you, the face of Daladier, the French leader at the Munich conference, and you know he's not really comfortable, you know, doing this, and he thought, God, I'm going to be in trouble when I get home. But shoot, the people were loving it. They were saying, we love you, monsieur. You know, you're wonderful. Je t'aime, je t'aime. You know, and all that. And you're thinking, I had no idea. But that's, yeah, it was a big group. And again, when the British government, you see this, will feel themselves bound at once to lend the Polish government all support in their power. Now, notice the date, March 31st. And remember, September is coming. It's hard to believe because it seems, you know, yeah. All of this is just such a short time. And I just want us to keep that in mind because I think sometimes you forget and you think it's like some long period that the Polish had the Anglo-French guarantee. And the British and French will sort of be faithful to it. Another event when we think about 1939 is saying goodbye temporarily to Litvinov. We've loved him. He's been a big hit in Geneva. Just ask him, well, what do you really love, Maxim? Collective security. Collective security. And I love Joseph Stalin a lot. I think about Stalin day and night. I mean, it's like, yeah, you better. But even his love, and you see what a jolly is. He's talking to some Czech there, hanging out, telling some cute Soviet Czech joke, I'm sure. But next to him is somebody with a rather stony face. His name, like the famous cocktail, was Molotov. And you say, he must be a laugh riot. You can see him hanging out with his new Czech friends. It's like, couldn't you laugh it up a little bit and say, how about that Teshin? Pretty good times in Teshin. I mean, it's like unbelievable. But look at Benesh, bless his heart. Benesh, I mean, if you had to sit with Joe Stalin and say, yeah, those were good times in Moscow. We really appreciate your hospitality, and it's a fun place to be. Well, I mean, what do you say to these people? I mean, poor Benesh, blessed, yeah. I hope he was happier in London.
Much happier.
Much happier. But meanwhile, Litvinov's out of a job. Not, for goodness sakes, out of a life, because he got to die in his bed in 1951, so I'm happy about that. But he would go on to be ambassador to the United States. But I just find it very interesting that he went to this meeting, even though he was about to lose his job as foreign minister. I think you get to keep your pension. So don't worry, I mean, you get dental and x-rays are covered and all that. So you don't have to worry about that. But you do, you have to think about the purge trials were going on. So you have to, you worry about making that life insurance payment, because you're never sure. But he would continue to get jobs. But Stalin had decided to go a different way. Litvinov was all about, oh, we like you, you British and French, cool people. We'll bury you, because Comrade Marx, Comrade Lenin, not to mention the Holy One, who's the initial to JS, have shown us that your way is the wrong way and our way is the right way. So, I mean, we can say this and be nice, and we can have tea and crumpets, because our wife's British. Yeah. And all of this, but we're still a Soviet. And he was also Jewish. Not a religiously practicing Jewish, not obviously as a communist, but ethnically. So, now what? Molotov gets his job because now Stalin does not want Litvinov representing him. And why? Because Stalin has decided the relationship that he had longed for with Britain and France was not to be. What were the signs? How would you like to go to the Moscow post office and you're waiting for that invitation? The pleasure of your company in Munich is asked for with the RSVP? No. I wonder if the Soviet post office lost the letter. I guess we weren't invited. Would you be hurt? Heck yes. Well, what do? Do you get mad? No, you get even. You do. Yeah, exactly. Okay, bourgeois pigs. So you want to have your Munich party and you don't want us. Well, we don't want you at our party either. We hate you. Yeah, I mean, this is so ugly. And it's shocking to think this great Joseph Stalin could be ugly. But he just like the rest of us, he had bad times and good times. But this was a bad time. And, incidentally, if you're wondering about that meeting with the Czechs, And you're thinking, did they have a big hug? I don't think so.
No.
Because I'm thinking probably the Czechs wanted some understanding of protection. And Stalin would say, sure, we'll protect you, but the French have to get in first, and then we'll come. And I think Benesh went home and said, we appreciate you talking to us, and let's stay in touch. You know, I know. And let's stay in touch in 4.5 minutes. Y'all can have a little break. Do they get the whole break?
Did you hear any cell phones?
No, they
4.5 minutes?
4.5 then. Yeah. We are now ready to go.
You're on green, right? Yeah.
And again,
There you go. I'll put it in your coat pocket.
again, let me recall that the decision to, shall we say, let Litvinov go, I don't know is polite, if there's a more polite way to say it, as foreign minister was strictly based on the fact that Litvinov stood for the Soviet Union's future security, lay in, I don't want to call it friendship, let's just call it alliance with Britain and France. You say, something makes me recall a deal between the Soviets and the Germans at Rapallo, Italy. And if you say that, I commend you on your wonderful memory. I praise you for it. You'll do well on the test.
There'll be a new
Because you'll remember the early 20s. And you are a saint. Because many people would have forgotten this, and it could be on the exam, the Treaty of Rapallo. See, there you go. Your mind is like this huge encyclopedia, Judith. It's just the praise. I just can't lavish you with. If you could just spread this wealth of wisdom. The Treaty of Rapallo between Weimar Germany and the Soviets, when everybody despised them and they reached out to you and they were saying like, they don't like us. They don't like us either. Could we be? Yes, we could. But something had happened. I think it's called Adolf Hitler happened. And any pretense that Germany and the Soviet Union could be pals, I think you could say that time was over. So Stalin basically had to work out other arrangements. And they did not include this let's be jolly Litvinov. Instead, the somewhat dour, well, not somewhat, the dour Molotov, who would have this interesting future ahead as leader. Now, what am I doing? See, just can't even remember. So, basically, this photograph, 1935, and you can understand that by 1939, circumstances have changed. Litvinov is not going to be in the photograph, for one, and Benesh has moved to London. It's been real in Prague. It was real in Geneva, but things have really changed. Molotov, this is a frontal in case, suitable for framing if you get to be really attached to Molotov as a result of class today. But if he really does that for you, this is him on a bright moment. Hey, sunshine, this is that's about as happy as he's going to get for you. But there he is, and what he's going to represent as far as the British and French is going to be whatever warmth towards them we can work out some kind of deal, maybe the three of us. Molotov is going to be sort of like, if you're not willing to make the commitments, then we're not willing to sign anything with you. I don't know how serious the British and French were. I mean, the French weren't going to do anything until the British said, because that's the way the French were by this point. And as far as the British were concerned, I'm not so sure that they were comfortable even with Litvinov. Certainly not Neville Chamberlain. I mean, these people are, can I use the B word? Bolsheviks. Yeah, and don't forget, I mean, it's not like, they are Bolsheviks. And it's like, it's very, very hard. And they said, can't we all just, we've got differences, and yet we're all very, very concerned about Poland. We don't want to mention Germany. Let's just say we just all love Poland, and let's look after Poland. And then the Poles are going to say, thanks a lot, commies, but we would really not like to have you on our lands. So, really? I mean, I thought, no, well, you thought wrong. It's like if the Soviets can't even go on Soviet land, and they're expecting our guarantee against you-know-who, and it starts with G and has 3 syllables. I don't think we all can figure that one out. Then why are we doing this? We don't even like them. Russians, Poles, that's not a marriage made in heaven. No love. So, all of this then to say that by Molotov's time as foreign minister, any deal between the Soviets with the British and French is a no-go. And all of this is to set up some special times. And you think, no, yes, it can happen. It's like magic. It's like some enchanted evening. I don't know. It's like, could something like this, can they come together? Yes, despite all the hurt. And you say, really? Well, in a certain way. We'll put it that way. I call it chilly. I think that's fair. You could call it some other things, but the Soviets and the Germans, they had lost that love and feeling, okay? It's like there was no, relations had been difficult. And as I tell you, I mean, you go back to the Treaty of Rapallo, yes, there was a time when the Germans and the Russians were working together and they were outcasts, and they worked together and they had a lot of trade and so forth and so on. But in the 1930s, the anti-communist nature of the Nazi regime and the strong regime of Stalin were bound to be in major conflict, especially, of course, when that invitation got lost by the post office. You keep waiting. You think, well, we're very concerned about Czechoslovakia and the Sudetenland. Why can't we come? Why didn't we get our invitation?
Don't like commies.
Well, I know, but it hurts. I mean, we love you, and yet you reject us, and that's very painful for the Soviets. I'm serious. I mean, he would say over and over again, and historians have agreed, the Munich Conference is very, very important in the way this relationship between Germany and the Soviet Union will develop, because of the fact that Stalin is going to say, okay, then maybe there's a different way I should go. Now, people might think when I talk about this that somehow Hitler's going to say, you know, I think I'll go to the Berlin Public Library and check out a copy of Das Kapital, or maybe read the greatest hits of Lenin, or play some new I Am a Comrade. No, I don't think that's going to happen. No. I mean, there isn't even a communist party in Germany. Do you know that? You know, and you say, well, where are the German communists? Moscow. Well, those who could get out, major leaders, yeah, but there were some who were contained. But they were definitely, fair to say that this is not something like, we want to be more ecumenical in the Third Reich and reach out to all the people and have a hug. No, it's based on the fact that Germany had decided that maybe, as they say in diplomacy, a rapprochement, don't you love that word? A rapprochement. Oh, the French, they give us so many words. Forgive my awful accent, Dr. Moody. But it's like we can learn to get through our differences and work together. A renewal of what was. Maybe that date, going out once. Well, whatever the case, there was a possibility of an economic relationship, even while Molotov was talking to the British in French. Can you imagine? Talking about a possible defensive relationship. But all the time, Molotov had planned, Stalin and he had gotten together and said, we're going to dump them. But right now, just play along with them and say, oh, well, that's interesting. Can you get a list of that? People do that. It's a waste of time, yak, yak, yak. And meanwhile, they're sending wires to Berlin saying, that trade deal, we want it to be more. We like the trade, but we'd like to be closer. And I think in Berlin they're going, really? It's sort of like, I don't want to go too far. We want to know what they're thinking. Yeah. Very devious. The ways of diplomacy. Neither one wants to commit. The other one wants to say, I wonder what they'll say. Yeah, a little shy. And yet that over time there can be something special. And so, in fact, one of these individuals in the German office is going to say, it's going so well in our trade talks. Could we speed this up and just kind of, how do they say, cut the red tape, or can't we just get on with it because we really are interested? You Soviets are special people. That sort of thing. And these are little signals, I would think, that Soviets and Nazis are sending each other. There's a spark there. Maybe there could really be something. All of this, a very hot time, August. I know. So it's very dramatic as we're building up here. And the next thing you know, we're flying to Moscow, Olivia.
Решению правительства СССР для обсуждения с советским правительством вопросов, связанных с событиями в Польше, господина фон Риббентропа встречали товарищ Потемкин, заместитель наркома иностранных дел, работники наркоминдела и весь состав германского посольства.
It was a quickie because he was not going to be over there long. I don't want you to think he was spending a long weekend. This was like, we got agreements to sign, because I got a flight home. I need to be back in Berlin. As much as I'm enjoying you Soviets, I'm crazy about y'all, making new friends. You know, it's so special. But, you know, I really, really need to get on the road. Got the Nazi special taking me back from Berlin, Moscow to Berlin. So he is there, I would assume, about 12 hours. And I'm going to tell you, it wasn't just talking. There was a lot of drinking. I guess it was vodka. Because, I mean, you know, you would think, but when they entertain, you can't just say, no, I think I'd just rather have some coffee. Or, you know, because they want the toast and all of that. So I wonder if von Ribbentrop, well, I guess he was used to drinking. His system would accept it. So he knew something about spirit. And he would get home that night. Meanwhile, of course, there would be a variety of meetings. In my readings on this topic, it's been very interesting. I mean, they had I guess it wasn't a day's end, but it had some nice hotel suite for him, so he could hang out with other members of the German delegation, and and then the German ambassador to the Soviet Union. I'm sure after a few Sieg Heils, they would then say, well, what should we tell these commies? I mean, what's up? We got this big deal coming up with Stalin, and they say, well, we've got to hang tough, but we've got to do some big smiles and show a lot of interest. So, there's time for that, but there is very little other time. It's very interesting how much has been done. And I'm thinking, I don't know this, but I'm thinking even as nice a plane as I assume von Ribbentrop's plane was, I'm not sure that would be like a modern plane that you would just kick back and say, they bring you some sauerkraut or Wiener Schnitzel, and you could just say, oh, damn those communists. But I would just concentrate on making it safely, and it's probably loud too.
It's loud.
Yeah. So basically, we just want to get there and then get ready for the agreements, because we got a lot of drinking. And this will be not the kind of drinking at your nice parties. Because your drinking would not be straight vodka or it would be just nice cocktails on the rocks and maybe holding the glass a great deal and just enjoying the company. But I'm thinking this is like, here's to you and all the wonderful communists like you, and that kind of thing. And everybody lifts it up and you say, but isn't that called binge drinking? I didn't ask you to accept it or approve it. I just want you to understand it. And they are going. But it must have helped on the trip going back to Berlin. Because if you've got to sit with these ghastly Soviets, of course they had a lot of important things to talk about. Like Poland, for example. They have some things to say about Poland, and none of it is good. They're not, I heart Poland shirts. Believe me, Poland is going down. Now, that is not in the public part. That is in the private part. We know that because of captured German documents. None of this was known about until, I guess, 45 or 46. Publicly. I mean, we knew, but we didn't know, So, what they talked about publicly is, all the hurt and all the sadness, let's just reach out to each other. Can't we be friends? It's hard for me to imagine Joseph Stalin saying, yes, comrade, you big Nazi, give me a hug. You know, it's just very, very hard to imagine those people. But that is the facade they are going to put on. It's like, would you invade me? No. Would you invade me? No. Are we going to be good friends? Well, let's work at it. Because we can't go just from total enmity to like kissy-kissy. That's a bit much. So the Soviet-German non-aggression pact is not the same thing as like, I love you, I want to be your friend forever. You can't move that fast. It takes steps. You kind of got to go around and so the agreement states, and from what I've read about this, it was clearly written with that understanding. I mean, too much hurt had gone between them. Yes, between the Stalin regime and Hitler, that then they could just say, oh, we will love you forever. No. So it will be basically, we can work together, and as we work together, we will ensure that if one finds itself attacked by someone else, the other one will not get involved. It's got to be very clear. A non-aggression pact means I'm not going to get on you and you don't get on me. And that's basically it. It's not like if someone hurts you, I'm going to be right by your side. And it's none of that. That's not non-aggression. It simply means if those old British and French try to hurt you, you know what? We're not going to help them. We're not lifting one finger. They're not even getting a cup of tea. You know what that means if you're British. I mean, almost death. I mean, without tea. So this is what it means. And for the British, it essentially means the Soviet Union has been neutralized. And so really that's not too good for the British and French. Well, then maybe they should have sent that invitation to Munich. It's a little late, isn't it? Made a mistake, didn't you? Well, that's not the way that the Soviets, they were ready now to say those days are over, and we are ready now to accept a friendship of sorts with the Germans. And maybe we have something else on the plate that we didn't mention to the media, but we have some plans for Poland. And I think we will start there next time. Thank you all very much, and we'll wind it up for the turn. Thank you all.